A lot of CEOs tell me the same thing. We're investing in AI, but the organization isn't moving any faster. That's not a tech problem. It's an organizational one. Learn what's getting in the way at leaderbook.ai. 3 years ago, you took the CEO seat. So what's the thing about this job that nobody warned you about? The thing that you only learned like once you're in it?
No one warns you that the only way to prepare for being a CEO is to actually be a CEO. And I think a lot of people talk about strategy and talent and execution, but the thing that not a lot of people talk about is what I think is the most important competency of CEOs, and that is
I'm Felicia Shakiba, and this is Leaderbook AI, where we solve a business challenge in every episode. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in the boardroom wants to say. The AI transformation your company is running right now isn't a technology project. It's a people project. And the people who got you here, the ones who earned their seats through a decade of being right, might be the exact people you can't take with you. That's the call every CEO is being asked to make this year, and most of them are ducking it. My guest today isn't. Tina Murphy took a job in Boston 26 years ago, 2 weeks after her company was invented. She ran marketing, she ran strategy, she ran Europe, and 3 years ago, she walked into the CEO chair at GHX. And today, she's making the hardest call of her career. Not about product, not about capital, but about people. Welcome to the show, Tina.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're happy to have you. Tina, can you take me back to the Boston office 26 years ago? 2 weeks in, the industry's calling it the shot heard around the world. What did you actually think you were signing up for? And when did you realize it was something else?
Yeah, I had no idea what I was signing up for. It was an absolute whirlwind, because there's nothing like this feeling to be at a startup and be part of something that you know is remarkable, something bigger than yourself. And you know, when you're in that startup environment, priorities are they're so clear, because often they're existential, and there's, you know, titles don't matter. Everyone's just leaning in and focusing on outcomes, and you celebrate wins because like there's not a lot else to sustain you in those early days. And so when I look back at that time today, those lessons, those experiences that I had in the startup are actually serving me very well to this day.
And 3 years ago, you took the CEO seat. So what's the thing about this job that nobody warned you about? The thing that you only learned like once you're in it?
Yeah. No one warns you that the only way to prepare for being a CEO is to actually be a CEO. And I think a lot of people talk about strategy and talent and execution, but the thing that not a lot of people talk about is what I think is the most important competency of CEOs, and that is asking the right questions. And here's why. Like, you're probably not a lawyer, you're probably not an engineer, you're probably not an accountant, and yet the most consequential legal, technology, and financial decisions are yours. So asking the right questions becomes incredibly important.
So what does that mean? What are the types of questions that you think are the most critical to making an impact?
Yeah, I think there's three categories of questions. So let's just use an example of nuisance lawsuits. So before moving into this role, I didn't know anything about lawsuits. So the first series of questions you have to ask is just educating yourself on the particular question, like learning precedent on nuisance lawsuits, learning how they've been handled in the past. How often do they have? The second set of questions is just seeking to confirm that you actually now do understand. So, okay, from what I heard, is it true that, and then you're asking series of questions to make sure you do understand the particular scenario. And then the third set of questions, which are really the first time you're adding value to the situation, is based on series 1 and 2. Then you're saying, oh, have you thought of A, B, or C? And I think in doing so, it is how, as CEOs, we are able to equip ourselves with the best information to make the best decisions.
Yeah. And tell me more about that in regards to, like, I think a lot of times leaders, they ask the same questions over and over again. And I think sometimes that works. But I also think that, like, when is the right way to ask a question that maybe you're not used to? Like, what is the situational context? And I'm just curious because I think that understanding like how hard to push and how hard to pull is sometimes very ambiguous. And
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like it's almost the art of being a CEO,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah, no, it absolutely is. Um, Motivations matter. Am I asking you a question because I'm seeking to understand? Am I asking you a question because I want to make better informed decisions? Or am I asking you questions because I don't trust you or because I undermine you? So I think when you show up and your motivation is pure and your motivation is clear, then you won't have the unintended consequences that you alluded to.
Yeah, I completely see your point and your perspective on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. That was a great answer, by the way. I mean, okay, so somewhere along the way, the job changed. AI stopped being a line item on the roadmap
Yeah.
and it became the roadmap.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when did that hit you and what did you do the next Monday?
Right. So we'd been using AI for years internally, but in that fateful December where ChatGPT went from almost zero users to tens of millions of users, it became very clear the power of this incredibly rapidly proliferating technology to change not just business, but society at large. And so we did at GHX what we always do at GHX. We rolled up our sleeves and we dug in as fast as we could to learn. And that pace, that pace at which we dug in to learn has not let up over the past few years.
And you told me priority 1, 2, and 3
Yes.
is talent,
Yes.
not product. You didn't tell me
No,
strategy,
no.
wasn't capital, which I think a lot of people think it is. How did you land there? Like, what did you have to stop believing to get there?
Yeah. Companies are nothing but a cohort of people rallying around a singular mission. So the people and the talent are everything. Now, especially as we are transforming in the age of AI, first, we have to disrupt. And after we disrupt, we can grow. So phase one in that disruption. Now, mind you, that disruption is controlled, it's self-inflicted, it is in service to your purpose. But to be able to navigate that disruption, you need a certain type of talent. You need talent that are consummate learners, and not just learners, but the ability to unlearn things that they thought were true that aren't serving them well anymore. And you need courageous leaders that are willing to step into the unknown, because in times of rapid and profound change, there's no precedent. So what you need is leaders that can learn and leaders that are courageous.
Okay, I have so many questions because I love that answer, but I also feel like leaders don't know really how that shows up in the business. So when you say, like, for lack of a better word, continuous learning environment, or being able to be courageous, you need psychological safety, right?
Yes.
Like, what
Yes.
does that mean?
Yes.
So can you just share a little bit of like, what does that look like? What do those two pieces look like at GHX? We'll be right back. Back to the show.
Yeah. So, yeah, I walk into every meeting ready to learn something new and to leave something behind. And what that looks like is in a meeting, someone says something and I might say, "Oh my gosh, I love that. I hadn't thought about that." Or someone says something and I go, "Oh, I take back what I thought. I actually really like the way you framed it better." Or even the ability to say, "I don't know. I don't have the answers. Here's how I'm thinking about it. Here's how I'm working to get the answers. Do you have any thoughts?" Because I don't think today people don't need leaders that have all the answers. They need leaders that are open. They need leaders that are present. And in the age of AI, they need leaders that are human.
Yeah. I feel like that is about creating a culture of a safe space for people to be more courageous and to, I mean, I've seen organizations where those toxic environments get toxic because the expectation is that you're supposed to have the answer. And if you don't, you're in trouble, right? So I think a lot of people are still going through, I mean, just leaders and, managers and even individual contributors are really going through the ambiguity of what comes next. And I think what you're talking about helps you get there. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And vulnerability, the word, we need to come up with a different word for that because the word in and of it's like, it means a weakness. If there's a vulnerability in a building, it's a weakness. But in the workforce, vulnerability is courage. Vulnerability is strength of character to speak up. And, I would ask our listeners, give it a chance. Like, just give it a chance, try it out. Because when you show up as vulnerable, it doesn't appear as a weakness to the team. It actually allows the team to exhale. It allows the team to open up, to speak up, and it actually strengthens bonds incredibly
Yeah.
by being vulnerable.
Yeah. I agree. I agree that we need to come up with a different name.
Yeah.
It's not a, it's not an appropriate reflection of what that
No, of what
really
it
is and
means.
looks
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to think about that, and I'm going to think about what the other names we're going to come up
Right.
with in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
So you said the hero of the last chapter is usually not the hero of the next one.
Yeah.
So you don't have to tell me names, but
Right.
paint the archetype for me. Like, who is that person sitting somewhere in a company today, and what does the conversation with them sound like when it's honest?
Yeah, it's a really important question to be asking now because there is no precedent for the hero of today. But what we're doing is we're looking at what are the leading indicators, right? So one obvious leading indicator is when I hear someone say, I spent my evenings and weekends vibe coding a new application. Like, that is someone that is geared up and ready for a future of AI versus the person that says, I think it's a fad. It's not really for me. Doesn't really serve my function, right? That is a person that probably now belongs in a different industry. So now every company may go about this differently. What we did is we sat down and we said, okay, in 2 years, this is what we believe leadership should look like. And so then we backed into that and said, okay, what actions do we need to take today to make sure we're assessing and attracting the right talent into the company, to make sure that we're inspiring those within the company? And then how do we move an incredibly rapid pace to continue developing the workforce?
Yes. Yes. And I love that you think about it, years from now. Like, what
Yeah,
is the future?
right,
The future
right.
leadership, the future skill set and competencies that are needed, because a lot of times organizations don't take that time to reflect and think about the future, and they think about what do we need today, and then once they implement it, it's a whole new
Obsolete.
world.
Yeah. No, it's obsolete. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more about that, because I think it's one thing. I think 50% of the job is really just identifying, what is the future? What are the needs?
Yeah.
Which is a big lift. But the
Yeah.
other 50% is actually implementing and what that looks like and encouraging. I know organizations who have said all these wonderful, great things, who've got it right around what they think they need. But then there's still a good amount of quote unquote old behavior that persists. And then newcomers come into the organization, and then there's this challenge between the new and the old way of things. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if you've had this experience, but this is
Yeah.
what I've seen, and maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah. And it's a great question. And in these unprecedented times, right? A time where if a startup used to take 6 to 9 months to launch a new product, now they're doing it into 6 to 9 weeks. And so what this moment requires is very different leaders. And to your point, it's a leader that is able to look across the enterprise and see the thousands and thousands of points of invisible friction that slow us down and remove those. So number one, identifying the friction and removing it. Number two, and this has always been the case, but mobilizing the team rapidly around a very clear and a very compelling strategy. Now, in the age of AI, it may evolve and tweak faster, but that clarity is incredibly important. And then speed, being able to work at the speed this moment requires. And maybe you have to move forward when you don't have all the answers, but you have enough to move forward responsibly.
I think speed is really at the top of mind of most leaders, given how fast people are working now. There was a guest on my show who, Daisy Graywall, Dr. Daisy Graywall, and she was doing people analytics around org design at Intuit. And she was talking about what does speed look like in an organization, regarding the structure. And she kind of debunked the myth that flatter is better, because decision making is actually, it's not like how many reporting lines or middle managers or anything like that, but it's actually how the organization makes decisions depends on how much red tape, you have to wait for and pause for and so forth. So could you provide an example of how does GHX move fast at the
Yeah.
speed that it needs to?
I think you need to look at the multiple facets of decision making. We often talk about different, a RACI chart, like who's got the D, who informs the decision, who can veto the decision. And I think there are companies and they focus on that, and that is great because it's a way to have clarity. But I think you need to go and look at what are some foundational things that are slowing down decisions. So for example, guess what? Making a decision is hard because you're going to be accountable. And so there are people that don't want to make a decision because to some people, it's more fun than making a decision, having a whole bunch of meetings where we can talk about decisions and create more PowerPoints and service to more meetings. So I think you have to face, I remember giving a talk recently, which is like, you might be slowing down decision making if it's at the end of a meeting and you had intended to get a decision out of that meeting and one didn't happen and you didn't get that decision, it is your job to diagnose it. Is it that you didn't make the call? Is it that the person that you thought needed to make it did it? So I think when we identify that, we look for, instead of saying it's just structural, the easy, lazy thing to say is there's, no one owns the decision and there's too many people informing it and all of that is true also. But I think holding up the mirror and saying, okay, where am I holding up decisions? Where am I dragging my feet? And being very focused and deliberate on that helps speed up the hundreds of decisions that happen in a given day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that a lot more people nowadays are looking at those PowerPoint meetings and kind
Yeah.
of pushing them aside, if
Yeah.
you will,
Power.
right? Do we
So
really need another PowerPoint meeting for
no.
this?
No, yeah. I have we still have PowerPoints. I will not say we are completely, but I'm an advocate of kill the PowerPoint. Like if you're spending time building a PowerPoint to present to me, that's time you're not focusing on the customer. And so really being conscientious and take ownership for where you're spending your time. Are you spending your time on outcomes? Or are you spending time on managing up?
Yeah. And you're rewriting GHX's talent intelligence program right now. What is the signal you're looking for today that you weren't looking for 3 years ago? And what disqualifies somebody the moment you see it?
Yeah. Um, we were always looking for speed. The definition of speed has changed. So we've always been looking for bold, willing to take action, but now the definition of that has changed. So I would say, we've always looked for learners, but now a learner it's happening at such a rapid pace. If you thought you knew what you knew in January, by March, it changed. So I think the fundamentals are the same. It's just now the stakes are higher and the needs are higher. And so we're looking at folks that can be flexible, can learn fast, that are vulnerable. So those qualities have always been important. They're just more important now.
Mm-hmm. They're just more of the center, the core of
Yeah.
who you bring into
Yeah,
the business.
yes, you can't get by with even a small percentage of the team that isn't exceptional across all of those ratings.
Got it. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Cole Napper, host of Directionally Correct, the #1 people analytics podcast in the world. Come check out our podcast that dives deep into topics like people analytics, workforce planning, and talent intelligence, helping leaders across the globe navigate the future of work with insight and a little bit of fun.
Back to the show. There's something that you told me about. It was a Tiger Woods story. And at the top of his game, he rebuilt his swing from the ground up. And as we run through this next era of AI, what's your swing as a CEO? And what's the piece of it that you're rebuilding right now where nobody can really see it yet?
Speed. And what we think about speed. I'm going to go back to there are so many orthodoxies that we have within an organization. And one of the hardest thing to see, and think of orthodoxies as truths that we believe are infallible. Think of orthodoxies as blind spots. And by definition, blind spots are blind. So the ability to start with a blank slate and look in all of those assumptions, orthodoxies, beliefs that we had, to be able to question every one of them in service to moving faster. So we may have policies and procedures in place that were because we wanted to be disciplined and diligent in the old world. And maybe we need to pull those forwards, but maybe we just, light a match to them and start from scratch. And it's the hardest thing for someone to do when you are in the ecosystem, right? When you are in it, the ability to pull yourself out. So think of it as the difference between like being on the field and being able to pull yourself out and be up in the press box, right? Looking out on the game and seeing all those points of friction so that you can eradicate them is, again, always been important at a much different scale now, because today it is existential.
Just curious about that comment, which is, speed, which I think both agree that this is a core core piece of being able to move in this world as we live in. But when is speed too fast? Is there such a thing, at this point?
Yeah. When it's careless, when it's not responsible, when it's not thoughtful. And I think we can do both. I think we can move fast and still not be careless and irresponsible.
Amy Edmondson found the hospitals that reported the most mistakes were the safest ones. You told me that companies fail silently and not loudly. And 5 years from now, when you look back at this chapter of GHX, what's the failure you hope you heard in time?
What I hope and what we're fighting for is that I don't look back and say, we were just too slow.
What does that look like? So we've talked about speed and we've talked about how fast we need to move. What is a specific example that you've been able to turn around in order to speed up?
So speed isn't just for the sake of speed, right? Speed is in service to the pace at which you meet your customers' needs. So what we did at GHX, we had to completely restructure the entire organization to get closer to our customers. We had been structured in silos, so we restructured around an enterprise system to get closer to our customers. So first we had to make pretty profound structural changes. And then we started engaging with our customers differently through more of a co-development cycle. So being in the weeds with our customers, looking at early solutions, rapid iterating, rapid prototyping. Again, it's the pace at which we are moving in service to listening to our customers, and then ultimately they have.
So it sounds like you started with the customer and worked your way back into what that looks like and how that mirrors what the customer needs are, like how the organization is stood up.
Right. And you have to think about, do customers want rapid disruption or do customers want just continuous improvement? And you have to meet customers where they are. And in today's day and age, you'll have some customers that want rapid transformation, rapid disruption. You'll have some customers that just want continuous improvement.
Yeah. And if you could share some advice for other CEOs sitting in that chair, what would you say to them as they look forward in the next 2-3 years ahead?
Yeah. Turn the entire ecosystem of how you do things upside down. And here's what I mean by that. If typically strategy is set in a boardroom and then with the leadership team and then is cascaded throughout the organization, turn it around and start with those on the front line. Strategy needs all millions of different diverse perspectives. And in an age of AI, an age of being able to record, our teams, our CSMs, our sales, our support, they have tens of thousands of discussions with our customers every day. So to be able to harness all of those discussions through AI, right, record them and bring them in. And so strategy starts with what your very broad set of data points from your customers, not 30 customers, not 50, not 100, but the tens of thousands of customer discussions. Strategy starts with those folks, the individual contributors, those on the front lines, those that are waking up every day in service and spending time with our customers. That is where it's starting. And then it's coming down to the leadership team. So if you find yourself setting strategy with just a few data points, with a small team of turn that around.
I love that. And I agree. I think you need so many data points to really, create a proper strategy and make good decisions. So Tina, it's been a fantastic time chatting with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for inviting me. I really I enjoyed the discussion, Felicia.
Visit us at leaderbook.ai. Your support as a subscriber means the world to us. So thank you for tuning in. I'm Felicia Shakiba. Let's connect on LinkedIn.